Live, go to NTV Uganda pages on Facebook and YouTube, and you'll find the Morning at NTV live stream right there. Now, hygienic sanitation facilities are crucial for public health, yet 61% of the global population do not have access to safely managed sanitation services. Safely managed sanitation has a multitude of social economic benefits. Functional sanitation systems improve health and welfare and fundamental to human development.
Now, integrated business models throughout the sanitation value chain can ensure the economic viability of processes that turn waste into valuable resources such as biofuels or agriculture products. Now, safely managed sanitation systems can also prevent contamination of water sources, thus leading to livelihood improvements. According to the World Health Organization, the estimated economic benefit of the return on $1 investment in sanitation is in the range of $5 to $28. Now, this explains why the Uganda National Bureau of Standards has come up with the standards for sanitation value chain within the country. We're joining us to have this conversation this morning. We're joined by Dr. Emmanuel Tumwesige. He is the chairperson of the National Mirror Committee. You're most welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you. Good morning, listeners.
And we're also joined by Mr. San Kim, and he is the IOSPC 318 chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, now we'll start the conversation with what exactly is this chain that is being mentioned, the sanitation value chain.
Yeah, so when you think about sanitation, it's oftentimes out of people's mind, and it's not something people often like to think about, but it is very important to safely manage fecal sludge. And so that's where Dr. Emmanuel, myself, and a large group of experts are working on improving the sanitation in the world, really.
Yeah. And I think, Mr. Tumwesige, maybe to make this meaningful for the viewer, where do we stand at as Uganda in terms of sanitation and hygiene?
I would say, first of all, I would start by telling you what sanitation is and what hygiene is, because we mix them up and they sometimes don't work very well. Hygiene is the practice of showering, of washing your hands every time you go to the toilet and so on. And on that front, I think in Uganda we are not doing very well. I would say we are about 4 on a scale of 1 to 10, 4 going up. And with the sanitation, maybe we are doing better, about on a scale of 1 to 10 again, about 5. Mm-hmm. So we are improving, but we are not yet there again. And most of the issues are related to information or share, people knowing what can cause disease and therefore avoiding it.
So it's best on a knowledge basis. It is based on the fact that Ugandans may not know what they need to be doing.
Yes, in general, if we know what would cause disease, I think everybody would want to prevent that, would want to see that you don't have disease. But so if you don't have information, then you don't know what will kill you, obviously.
Let's talk about access to water, because this go hand in hand. Would you say that this 4% with regards to hygiene and 5% with regards to sanitation, and you're talking about ratings out of 10, would you say that that could also be a factor that has been influenced with the provision or accessibility of clean water?
Yes, absolutely. For all of us, if you don't have water, then you must do with what you have. Some of us, when we were growing up, and I think it is still true now, that in many places you cannot have access to water unless you walk, maybe 1 hour or something, or 3 kilometers to get water, and therefore you must use it sparingly. So washing hands is wasting water, which obviously affects your health and hygiene at the end of the day. So if we have more water in our homes, close to our homes, then we improve. Definitely the sanitation improves. In this country, we are doing quite well, I would say, but we still have some way to go. I think the national coverage is about 68% for water, and therefore it translates into sanitation coverage as well.
Mr. San, you seem to want to say something in addition.
And if I may add, I actually, even though I'm the chair of ISO project committee, it's a voluntary position. All of us volunteer to work as experts in these project committees. And at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I belong to the Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene group. And I always say we work on a middle name, sanitation. The reason is water, we all understand how important water is, but oftentimes sanitation gets lost in the mix. And unless sanitation, whether sewer sanitation or fecal sludge management, is handled appropriately and safely, it ends up contaminating scarce water. And so in many countries, the lack of safe sanitation creates a situation where even when you can produce some safe water, it ends up becoming contaminated. So the way I like to say it is, clean water is sexy. Fecal sludge management, not so sexy, but it turns out it's actually a very, very important component of the water cycle.
So talking about fecal sludge management within our country, right now it has rained, and for a number of times when that happens, we see what happens with our trenches, and within the roads, a number of things come to the top and are left there when it rains heavily. Where would you put Uganda in terms of management of that, and what needs to be done?
In Uganda, I think we have to separate urban sanitation and rural sanitation. The rural sanitation is slightly different. As I said, some people are not doing it well because they don't have information. So defecating in the open, I have to use these words as they are. Yeah. So doing things like that would cause disease. But because our population densities in the rural areas are lower, so the prevalence of disease is much lower. But for urban centers, all of you, who have gone to places like Wise and others, know that the sanitation systems there are not very good. And so when it rains, like you said, then the fecal material may get into the water, and then off it goes and could potentially contaminate other water sources and cause a disease. And we know cholera and so on have been prevalent in the big cities in our country. So in terms of how we are doing, we still have a long way to go. And that's in part why we have this PC, this project committee, trying to develop standards so that we can encourage different ways of thinking about sanitation.
All right.
Not the end of pipe thing.
Let's talk about the standards and how practical they will be, especially, let's not just even go to the rural areas. Let's stick to the slum areas within Kampala. How will that inform the sanitation system in the slum areas? Because we know they're the most affected areas. When you talk of a sanitation, pretty much, infrastructure or a unit, then most of them actually don't have a washer or a hand washing point. So how will these standards be practical to such environments within Kampala?
Yeah, so the struggle between resources, availability resources, whether we're talking about water, energy, finance, it's a big barrier. And really, how do you improve the lives of everyone, including those living in informal settlements? And it's by having the economy ultimately work. And we're a firm believer that it is the economy through quality products defined by some minimum requirements. In this case, we're talking about an ISO standard, international standard that can be used in developed countries as well as developing countries. So when enough of these products are actually designed, built, and available on the market all over the world, the price point, we're expecting it to drop and be actually affordable. I mean, it amazes me when I go to informal settlements all over the world. Many people have cell phones. 20, 25 years ago, I could not imagine having a cell phone myself because it was too expensive. And now everyone has, maybe not the latest iPhone or Samsung Galaxy 10, but they do have means to communicate with each other. So nobody is waiting for a copper wire to be strung so that they can talk to somebody. So from our perspective, sewer sanitation has its role, but non-sewer sanitation also has a very important role to play in developing and developed countries.
And what role would this be?
If I could add on to what he's saying, stringing a copper wire between different individuals so that they can talk together. It's the same thing for sewage sanitation. So for urban centers, it's very expensive. The people of who run National Water and Sewage Corporation will tell you it's extremely expensive to run a pipe from one home to the next home and so on. So we are now talking about Kampala being covered on about less than 15%, the whole of Kampala. So it means we have 75% of the people in Kampala, yet Kampala is developing very fast, who are not covered with sewage sanitation. So they have septic tanks normally, and some of those are not safe. Some of them contaminate groundwater and so on. So this standard is intended to encourage new businesses to develop around disaggregated sanitation systems, which do not require pipelines, which do not require all this. We just finished a different standard. It's now a standard 30500, which is about home sanitation systems, individual homes. But these are now for communities. If you have an estate, a new estate is being developed around Gayaza or something, then we can use this kind of standard to develop products for community sanitation, as opposed to the long National Water and Sewage Corporation system.
Could we see that product also moving to offices? Or in terms of, let's say, big, like malls? Could that also move there, or that will particularly not be there?
So we're actually talking specifically about the larger processing systems, but what Dr. Emmanuel was just mentioning, ISO 30500 is actually the standard that defines a household scale non-sewer sanitation system that actually renders the fecal material pathogen free and environmentally sound. And that's at the Gates Foundation, we refer to that as reinventing the toilet. So just like the cell phone technology has dramatically changed the telecommunications, we envision the reinvented toilet. I would like to buy one when they become affordable. And right now we have universities and companies working on reinventing the toilet, but also recognizing that fecal sludge management is a very important part of proper sanitation. So that's why the fecal sludge processor, once you desludge from septic tanks and pit latrines, that you can actually process them again so that they're pathogen free and environmentally sound. And in the case of the Omni processor specifically, that 60, 80 experts are here in Uganda to discuss and iron out the technical details. It is actually intended to be a system that can, if the fecal material is the right material, actually does not require input energy. So that, because you don't want to fix the sanitation crisis on the backs of limited resources, such as energy.
Crisis in the process.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Right.
So.
Right. Let's talk about the standards. And you know, we know that urban planning is a thing that even governments are struggling with. Here in the country, KCCA has always, you know, struggled here and there to ensure that the planning is, you know, up to date. But we know that the situation on the ground is totally different. You'll find, you know, posh buildings here. Just a few meters away, we have a slum settlement, so to speak. So will these standards that you're working on just speak to the new developments that are going to come up, or you'll also look back at what is existent and try to correct that as well? What are we looking at?
The role of standards is to provide for specifications for services and products that meet that criteria. So the objective here is to try and develop a standard that does not contaminate water and is safe and efficient to use. So that's the basic principle. Now, beyond that, it is up to the businesses to see business niches in the urban slums, in the new developments, in the posh areas, within the world. As Kim said, this is not a standard for developing countries. This is a standard for all of us. So we all have sanitation problems. It's extremely expensive to build piped sewer systems, and we are offering standardization so that new products can be born that preferably use less water and therefore become attractive, they are energy efficient, and they are safe and efficient to use.
Now, one thing that comes up is the perception. You had also mentioned the fact earlier on is that people lack the knowledge when it comes to sanitation and hygiene. But the perception that Ugandans will have to this standard, have you perhaps seen that they're receptive to it? Are some of them a bit skeptical about how it will actually in the long run, long term, and even short term? How is it as of now with Ugandans?
I think Kim will also have an opinion on this. The idea of perception is not only for Uganda. It's we always have a perception in almost universally. When you go to the toilet, I have to use these words as they are. When you go to the toilet and do whatever you have gone there to do, you don't even want to look back. You just flush and off you run. So that is a perception. So which is true even for Uganda. We have been involved in sanitation systems like ecological sanitation and so on, but they have had challenges of functioning, because at the end of the day, when that dry material which comes out of fecal matter is given to you to go and put in your garden, you're like, oh no, I can't touch this.
Right.
So that is a perception issue. But so somebody's governments and so on, once they promote technologies, once they promote a way of life, then they will have to train people, teach people, work with people to improve on their perception of some things. Sometimes it's simply because of lack of knowledge. You don't know what would kill you, as I said earlier. Yeah.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, and what I would add is if you think about a standard, so ISO standards by definition are voluntary.
Yeah.
So manufacturers, governments, industry can use this on a voluntary basis until at such a time when a standard is implemented and actually part of a national sanitation policy or any kind of policy or regulation. The standards initially should not be part of any regulation or mandatorily required until such time as they become readily available and affordable. But what a standard does, in fact, most people don't realize that standards are all around us in defining requirements for products. You know, if you think about your mobile phone, it is full of standards that private companies and governments use to define a functionality and interoperability. And then there are, on top of that, regulations to make sure that it's not harmful. So regulating the requirements from the products coming out of a fecal sludge processor is appropriately at the national and local level meant to be regulated. But what is the quality of the product? What is the quality of the service? That's what a standard is ideally suited to control, to help public-private partnerships, to help businesses, to help government, to help individual, to benefit those living in informal settlements as well as in developed high-rises. This will go a long way to that.
Right. I think just let's speak to the viewer today, and we have, you know, an array of people who watch us every single morning. Of course, them that are in different standards and classes of their economic, you know, social economic status. Now, let's look at the benefits of, you know, proper sanitation management. What do we stand to gain? Rita did mention, you know, the change of mindset. What do we stand to gain? Of course, we did look at the return on investment, you know, $1 US giving back, you know, pretty much a range of $5 to $28 US. So with regards to the common person, just for them to understand why it's important and for them today to try and do their part in changing the, you know, the situation we have right now.
Again, I would say what we have been doing, what National Water and Sewage Corporation has been struggling to do is to make sure everybody has a pipe that leads to a sewage treatment plant, and it has been expensive and they have not been very successful, I would say. And so this standard encourages businesses to develop new business models, to be able to have decentralized sanitation systems, either at the homestead level or at the community level or even globally. So if we have business models that develop because there is a standard that regulates this, then we have new possibilities for doing business. At household level, as we said, perceptions are a problem, and some of the possibilities are that there are energy demanding industries in this country, Kajansi, who make bricks and tiles and all the things, would need a lot of energy. And fecal sludge, that which comes out of our waste, the drier part, can be used as energy source. So people who are business minded can be able to take the dried fecal matter and sell it to energy using companies such as Kajans and other similar places. So
biofuels, creation of biofuels as well as
I don't know whether we would call them biofuels, but charcoal.
Okay. You're saying it while after it's dried. So we have different options of energy. We have it dried for it to form charcoal. We also have biofuels that can be created out of it. We also do have manure for the farmers as well.
Absolutely.
Do speak to that, Mr. San.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about those, whether it's biofuels or gases or solids, you have to think in terms of making sure that it's pathogen free,
right?
So that people who are handling it, breathing it in. And if you think about the benefits to all of us, we're talking about a sanitation crisis impacting something in the range of 4.6 billion people in this world. These are our brothers and sisters. If we are so lucky to have a flush and forget toilet, we don't realize everything that goes into that. Dr. Emmanuel was talking about the sewer pipes, the water, the wastewater treatment plant. There are the more than 60% of the world don't have access to that. These are our brothers and sisters, and the negative impact on health, the impact, particularly to women and girls.
Right.
This is a crisis that is. It's not just about dignity, but it's also about people's health. Something on the range of 1,000 children die every day from preventable diseases. That's through fecal material. It's a crisis that we should all care about, whether you're poor or rich. It's something we can all get behind.
Okay. Well, now that you know that you can be a part of it in one way or another from your home, what you do at home could be able to have an effect on someone else. And we are moving into a new generation and a whole other way that we can do things. And even from the toilet, your bathroom, there's something you can do. It's very, very important. Now that you have listened and you now know what to do, the model is, just to confirm, the name of the model that you were talking about, the latest model.
No, we are not developing models. They are standards, and we are working on a voluntary basis as researchers and developers to develop a standard 31800, which will deal with fecal sludge. Fecal sludge is untreated feces. So deal with fecal sludge so that we get sustainable products, so energy efficient and
all right.
safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So this is a process that will take how long? When are we likely to have this done?
Yeah, I believe it's in February of 2020. It's typically a 3-year process, but with the experts and with the guidance from the national standards bodies and the twin secretariat, American National Standards Institute, along with Association Senegalese Normalization, we've actually been able to get through this, we think, in about 2 years.
All right.
But the whole process is actually quite a bit longer if you think about the document that was created, a private standard, and then an ISO International Workshop Agreement, and then now we're in this project committee mode.
All right. Okay, interesting. So now you know there's a lot to be done. You can imagine if we stand at 68% with regards to national coverage of water and all these other issues to do with sanitation. But you can do your part. Ensure that once you leave the washroom, just wash your hands. Let's ensure that these systems are in place, because we stand to benefit economically if we now reduce on the burden of disease. Yes, he did mention that we have a range of 1,000 children losing their lives to diseases that can be prevented. We're talking about diarrhea and all these other, diseases that are connected to fecal matter. So let's take charge. Let's do something before that is done and ensure that we save lives and we stay and keep healthy. That has been the conversation right here on Kickstarter. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel Tumwasije. He is the chairperson of the National Mirror Committee, and he was joined by Mr. San Kim, the ISO PC 318 chair. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, Morning at NTV still continues. Don't go too far. We'll be back with a Take Note conversation.
Play and win every 10 minutes. For every 1,000 you spend, it gives you 1 entry into the jackpot this Sunday.
On MTN, simply dial *165*33#. That's *165*33#. Then enter your 3 lucky numbers.